life can be difficult when you're the gardener's assistant's helper, second class, because one day you'll be trimming the Queen's bushes, and then the next, a demon will show up and kidnap the princess. And to make matters worse, the guards think you're in on it, and will throw you in jail. And what else can we do? Well, we'll have to break out and rescue the princess. And that's what we're going to do in today's game, the Arabian Nights. And welcome to Goldfish on Games. The Arabian Nights was developed and published by Chrysalis in 1993 for the Amiga, with a port to the CD32 coming out a year later, so this is an Amiga only title. Inside the colourful box we get a manual that goes over a number of different control schemes, which hints at the multiple game styles that we can expect, as well as going over the various things that you'll need to know to play the game, all backed up with some nice touches of humour. The game itself came on just 2 discs, which is impressive considering what they managed to pack in. And we start the game where the intro finished, in jail. Although the jailers really didn't do a very good job, as they left the key to the door in the cell with us. They also just let you keep your sword. You just can't get the help these days. This is obviously in aid of teaching us that this isn't a simple platformer. There are items to collect and puzzles to solve. And to give a bit of credit to the jailers, I doubt they expected a simple gardener's helper would have the agility to cross an acid-filled room via floating platforms. It's actually quite funny to think of them dragging the poor kid across all of this lot to get him in there in the first place. The weapon comes in handy as we have to deal with one of those useless jailers. Their sword might look big, but they are quite slow, so dashing in and hitting them and then quickly pulling back is a good technique. Not that this game has the most complex combat system. A big part of the gameplay that isn't fully explained to you at the start is finding hidden doors. As at the start it might just be to get extra gems, but as you go on it becomes far more important. Because those gems, they're not just for points, you'll need them for some of the puzzles, as we'll find this poor guy hanging from his arms. And because we think that everyone in this jail has been wrongly arrested, we need to free them. But a winch handle will be required to get him down. Luckily for us, there is a person just up the stairs who is willing to sell us a snake for gems. And it's not a solid snake, but a rigid snake, and thus it can take the place of a handle and let our long-armed friend go free. With a set of lockpicks as our reward. The rest of the level plays out much like this, with platforming, fighting, and the odd puzzle to solve. Nothing too complex, not for the first map anyway, but there are lots of hidden rooms for you to find and areas to explore. And on completing the first level we get the greatest puzzle of all, the copy protection, which requires you looking up 3 of the right symbols in the book to be able to pass. And with that done we get to then deal with customs. I have nothing to declare, apart from all the gems and items I have stuffed down my shorts. Thankfully, unlike modern custom checks, this one just tallies up what you've collected in the level to give you extra points. And with that, we're off to the forest, which is a slightly more straightforward level after the last, as there aren't too many baddies, mostly these birds that look like a cross between an owl and an apple. But we do find this guard that's been turned into a bear, and is crying up in a tree. Now in most other games you'd expect to be able to help turn him back, and this game even gives hints to that effect. But instead, we end up finding a thimble, and we'll use that to collect some of his tears. Not too much, as if it overflows it all vanishes, you need just the right amount, and we'll use that to water a plant to make it grow. Now after that, we have no need for the guard, he just gets left there. All of this is in aid of us finding some special thread to make a magic carpet. And we know it's going to be special if the effect of making it is anything to go by. But before we get to try that out, we have to deal with something else. A boss fight. There are a few in the game, and they aren't the most complex of fights. In this one, we just have to hit the boulders back at the thing that keeps throwing them at us. And then we get to take to the skies in a magic carpet ride. And rather than showing us the world, taking us wonder by wonder, we get to blow up a lot of things, as this is a shoot 'em up level. And wow, is our hero tiny against everything else. I guess it's good if our hitbox is also the same size? But there really isn't much to this section, as it's better to avoid most of the things that come on the screen rather than trying to shoot them, as this is very much a Euro shooter. So everything takes way more shots than it should do to take out. There is also very little in the way of set pieces, upgrades, or even a boss. So it's just a case of making it to the end of the level. And what else will we find at the end of this magic carpet ride but a galleon to board? Here the difficulty jumps up dramatically, as not only do we have to deal with baddies that will now respawn, but they're also the ones that like to explode and send projectiles that you'll have to avoid. Oh, and there's also spikes, because that's what a ship at sea that's rocking wants. Massive spikes. Oh, and a moving worm block that you have to walk along. All in the aid of getting you to the magic cauldrons that will take you to the other parts of the map. This level is far more about the platforming than the items, but there are a few switch puzzles for you to deal with, as well as you'll have to take out some baddies to get some fish, which you can give to the crab chef to cook up. And then we get to literally pull the plug on the ship. But we don't have to worry about drowning, as we got a special fish that will let us breathe underwater. Wow, even the customs area was flooded. And what 90s platformer would be complete without an underwater level? So that's what we get to next. With the main character that can actually swim, rather than just move and jump slowly. And if you explore this area enough, you'll find an amulet that will increase the number of hit points that you have. But it's a bit of an odd pickup to get, as there's quite the range of settings when it comes to dialing in the difficulty, as you can set the number of lives you have, how much health you get, as well as the general difficulty level on top of all that. There also seems to be a setting for the amount of detail, but I've not yet worked out what detail it actually changes, as on the early levels I couldn't see any real changes. The underwater level ends up being a bit of a maze, as you have to try and find your way to the exit. There are a few baddies that you'll have to avoid as you can't use your weapon while swimming, but it's not too hard for the most part. But every so often, one of those floating skulls will turn out not to be a level pickup, but instead a homing enemy that will try and track you down. And what else could this end with but yes, another boss fight. The only saving grace of this one is it's not underwater. And where else can this underground cave lead us to but a mine? And what do we do in mines? We ride minecarts! If you played the demo, or caught the Coveredist Face-Off episode where we covered it, you might be surprised to find the minecarts are so far into the game, as it was the second of 2 levels in the demo. This level is mostly a race against an empty minecart, and it doesn't really matter too much if you're first or second. But if you do want to go for it, you'll have to be careful, as there's magnets that will rip the wheels out from underneath your cart, or drops that can take you out. But afterwards you can continue on foot. And while I failed badly at this race, I have to say what a lovely looking, sounding and playing game this is. We get lots of unique music tracks that just fit the level so well, and we also get sound effects at the same time. There are a number of better known Amiga games that should have taken note of this. And just about every level has its own set of tiles and baddies as well, with some detailed looking backgrounds to top it all off. And it just moves smoothly and plays great. This is a game that should be much higher up on people's lists of great Amiga platformers than it tends to be. And while we consider why it's not, we get to go on to the Diamond Mine, which is effectively a continuation of what we just played, but it's a far more platforming orientated level. There's no real pickups or items for you to find here, or even puzzles that you need to solve. You just have to work your way to the exit while avoiding the spinning spike balls, the little spiky things, as well as miners that will try and throw their axes at you. And this will then lead on to another shooter level, that for the most part is exactly the same as the last. And you can actually get quite far by hugging the top of the screen, as outside of a few sheep that jumps quite high, and the gyrocopters that can get close to you, there's not much else that will attack you. That is until we get to the very end and we have a boss fight with the demon. And all that's left now is to work our way to the mastermind behind it all, the Vizier, and end this once and for all. This does mean working your way through an icy level, with all the physics that you'd come to expect from such a thing. But unlike most games, there's actually an item that you can find that will mostly negate that slippery surface nature, even if sliding around is needed to get under some of the walls. And along with that, there's also a pair of limited shoes that will speed you up, and a sword that will throw fireballs. Shame it will just vanish when you come up against the final boss. This is a lovely game, and one that I never really played up until recently, and I became hooked. And I feel it's one that every Amiga owner should play. It's not the longest game, and if you know what you're doing it can be completed in an hour, but it might take a few attempts to get good enough to do that. Yes, the shooter levels aren't the best, and I think they could have done a lot more with the puzzles and collecting side of things, as that sort of went by the wayside as the game continued, but it is still a lot of fun and very well made. And with that, I've been the Goldfish, that was Sinbad Jr working hard to save the princess, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it, as I had a blast playing and completing this game for the first time. And if you did, then you can do all the fun things with the buttons below, or even let me know in the comments. They're all appreciated.